All right, here we go. And of all the things that I do, nude bungee jumping, speaking to thousands, traveling around the world, running events, hoping people turn up to retreats after I've put a big lump sum down, putting people on a Facebook Live interview is probably the thing that brings me the most anxiety in my whole life. Simply, why is it not easy? Okay, I am going to invite Caleb. In fact, Caleb, if you're watching, okay, lovely. Ed. Oh. Adding. Fallback option, of course, is going to Zoom and streaming that way. So we're pretty kind of got our bases covered. Adding. See, can't just be me who's got anxiety right now. For those who don't know Caleb, I met. Hey,
Really?
how you doing?
Are we in?
Muy bien. Is that what you just said? That's very,
Yeah, we're in.
very
I
exotic.
thought that...
You've been watching Narcos.
No, I've got the little Mexican beard thinker. I have to turn my phone sideways. It's a bit awkward to make it work, but
Yeah,
hopefully,
sideways. That's it.
I tried to get the Queenstown view in the background, but it doesn't seem to be working.
Oh, bro, look at that crisp Queenstown. That crisp. It looks like a nice blue day. Yeah,
Here it
that's it.
is.
Walk outside and you'll get. Anyway, I was going in the wrong direction. So you walk outside. It's very fresh. It's very fresh. That's what I wanted to say. Anyway, bro, nice to see you.
Thanks, man. We drove up over the Crown Ranges yesterday, and it was just like stunning. There was snow everywhere. It was just beautiful, man. Such a pretty place.
Nice. It's not a bad place to be locked down. Do you have family in Queenstown?
In Dunedin.
Dunedin, okay.
So like Queenstown's so cheap at the moment, man. It's like a couple of $100 for a week's worth of accommodation.
Yep.
So
yeah,
we thought we'd come over.
Beautiful. Well, see, strange times scratch the surface of weird things that are happening down, but that's not what we talk about. I am not a expert on any of that stuff. But you are an expert on sales, and I believe I'm an expert in presenting, and together they're very powerful because presenters need to be able to sell from stage and also sell by using presenting to leverage their business. Most of us are using the skill or craft of presenting for exactly that. Mate, I'm going to frame up how I met you.
Okay.
So in January 2017, I just knew that the next phase I was going into my life was going to work, and I was putting in these huge hours. I just moved back from Bali. I was living with my dad in Christchurch, and my dad kept on coming downstairs and saying, "You're okay?" And I'm like, "I'm all good, Dad. I just know this is going to work." And I had in this audacious plan from going from nobody knowing me in Australia to straight out to having a sold out tour. Then
That's awesome.
I remember people into Melbourne, and you were one of the people that rung, and you were talking about like doing it as me, you being there free, and I said, "No, I'm not doing that." And by the end of the sales conversation, I've given you this free spot in return for some of your coaching. And I walked off and I went, "Do you know what? I actually feel good about this too." That's the crazy part, is he just talked me out of like a couple of $100 or $300, I think it was. And I felt good about it. And the way that you did it was like, I like this guy's way of doing sales. And speaking to you and getting to know you better over the series, the Business Playroom as well, I got to see that you have a really deep understanding of what's happening to people psychologically. when they sell, and that you created a five-step method as well when it comes to sales. How did you get into sales?
Oh, mate, there's so many great stories, but the one that stands out the most was I went to radio broadcasting school to become a radio DJ. So in New Zealand and Christchurch, they have a polytechnic that you can go and get a bachelor's degree in communication, which means you got a degree for radio. And I wanted to be a DJ, wanted to be a radio DJ. And but I was also very goal driven at the time. And there was this guy that came and spoke to us that, you know, when you meet a good presenter and they just move the room, he moved the room. And I was so curious about like what he did, who he was, what made him tick. I ended up asking him to go for coffee. I asked him to buy him lunch the next day, and this was sort of my first exposure to mentorship. And he sort of sat down with me and he said, "What are your plans for the next 5 years?" And I was like, you know, I want the house, the car, the girlfriend, 20-something years old, right? Yeah, like all of the stereotypical, you know, pathway. And he goes, "What's your vehicle to get there?" And I said, "I want to be a radio DJ." And he goes, "I hate to break it to you, son, but you'll be earning between $25,000 and $35,000 per year in that gig, and your dream won't be a reality." And I was like, "Oh, ouch." And this is, you know, like this is the very first time that I've ever been exposed to like your feedback with love. Like it wasn't said with like, "Screw you, you can't make it." It was like, "Yeah, you need to know this." And so I was like, "So what do you do?" And he's like, "I work in radio sales." And he said, why DJ? He goes, and I said, "Because I want to speak for a living. Like I just want to talk for a living." And he laughed, right? He's like, "All right." And he said, "Meet me here tomorrow, bring a suit." And I said, "I don't have a suit." Like I was a poor student. Man. I was living off like, there was $160 a week that I got from the government. And my rent was 130. So I had about $30 a week. And I don't know how I made it work. I think mum and dad gave me $20. So I was living on $50 a week. I was like, "I don't have a suit, man. I don't have any money." And he goes, "All right, well, meet me at this location tomorrow morning." And so I rock up there. It was Hallenstein's. As you know, like as a fellow Kiwi, where every young man gets his first boot.
Be a model for Hallenstein's. That was like one of my biggest clients. Yeah. Yep.
And he was like, "Go in the back, try on a suit." I was like, "Man, I can't afford these." Like I felt really uncomfortable. He said, "Don't worry about it." I pulled out the suit. We got one that fit. He said, "Put it on the counter," and he paid for it. And I was like, what are you doing?" And he goes, "Just get in the car." Like what's going on? And he drove to the next meeting, and the next meeting was an agency meeting where he said I was his intern, and I just sat in the back, and he's like, "Just watch and we'll take notes." And he was basically he was pitching a radio deal to some pretty big names, pretty big companies in New Zealand. And then afterwards we sat in the car and said, "What did you see?" And I was like, "Not a lot." And then from there, he just kept taking me to meeting to meeting to meeting. And then he showed me this list, and this is burned into my mind. He goes, "Here's the top 20 sales reps in New Zealand for radio. You see that number there?" And he pointed to their commission. It was like $20,000, $30,000 a month or something. So the top person was $80,000 a month. He's like, "That's what they earn on a monthly basis." And I was sold, man. I was like, done. All right. And we basically just hung out together for a course of about 3 months, and I went to meetings with him. And if you've ever read the book How to Win Friends and Influence People, he was like the personification of that book. And he always had rules, right? Like we'd be walking back from a meeting, I'd go to say something, and he'd go, "Don't talk." I'm like, "Why?" And he's like, "Rule number 3, always wait till we're in the car before you say anything about the meeting we just left." I'm like, all right then. So he had all these little rules, and he was like always remembering people's names and handshake. Like he was the epitome of that book. It was crazy. So he's the guy that got me into sales. And you're sort of connecting the dots that you could be charismatic and you know, you could talk for a living and close deals and be in control of your income. That was the biggest thing that got me there in the first place.
you were very lucky to have someone to do that with you. Caleb, it reminds me of when I had this epiphany that this is when really things really stepped up for me, was when I was presenting and acting. I realized that as much as it was good for the ego, I was still down the bottom of the food chain. Do you know what I mean? Because you can walk on set and the attention's on you, but you're still not in control of your destiny because someone is employing you. So I became a producer, and this I remember this executive producer took me on board, and I was super green. And I went from making $5,000 videos to 100, 150, $200,000 videos. And I remember him doing the same thing, taking me to meetings, debriefing. And I remember him taking me to this meeting, and he said, listen to me, you are not leaving this room without asking for the sale. Am I clear? And I was like, absolutely shitting myself, because it was like a big budget. It was ASB Bank. And he just goes, we've got the proposal. It's a lot of value. What we're about to create here is amazing. Feel really good about just asking for the money. It's a bank, for God's sakes. You couldn't have a better client. And it was the first time I'd closed a deal, and I was so nervous, but closed a deal of that size, and went, that wasn't so hard. And then that part became my addiction of all the, if you know me, I'm a very creative person, but my favorite part of being a producer, was making the budget. Going through all the little lists of, this is the camera, this is the crew, this is all the little bits, this is miscellaneous, this is our percentage, this is my commission. And that part used to just spin my wheels. I'd spend hours just on budgets before the creative, and then the creative. That idea of asking for money, although it became different again when I got on stage and started selling myself, was that first thing of going, you've got to realize that if you're good at what you do, you're actually asking for someone to speed up the process in return for using your expertise to speed up the process. So tell me, Caleb, why do you think there's a stigma around sales that people feel so icky with?
Because the way that we've taught sales hasn't changed in a long time. I was having a chat with a friend of mine the other day, because we were looking at, if you were to go online and ask to be taught sales, you really only have a couple of options, right? You've got Grant Cardone, who's got a very American style, like feels very rah-rah. Some people love it, some people don't. And you've got Jordan Belfort, right? The Wolf of Wall Street, who's an ex-felon who ripped a whole bunch of people off millions of dollars. These are your main options online. There's a whole lot of other people as well that you could look at, but these kind of feel like the market leaders. And if you look at the style of their training, it hasn't changed. Yeah. It's very push-based. It's very scripted. It's very tactical. And for a lot of people, the feedback is it just doesn't feel like a values match. Like you try it on and you feel gross and you feel salesy and it feels icky. And no wonder, because the focus of the sale is not where it needs to be, right? It's on tactics. It's not on people.
It's really interesting, Caleb. I have some amazing clients, and I think when you're teaching presenters, it's nearly always a sales part that can be really tough for them. There's just this, they can be becoming very good in the craft of presenting, and you go, how many clients have you got in the last month? None. And then I start going through their social media or going through their lives and going, do you know, not once have you invited someone to work with you. Not once have you actually said, this is how you can work with me and this is what that looks like. So why do you think too? This is the part that really gets me. We work really hard to put people in a room or create an opportunity where we get to work from stage, right? And the reason we work from stage is to get new people and leverage our business from that opportunity. Now, the amount of people that end up selling, this was me included, by the way, I'm not excluding myself from this. Um, I famously got locked in a room in Adelaide when I didn't sell at the end because I was just so nervous. It just felt so icky for me. And they locked the room and made me sell to them. That was my turning point. So what is it you think that happens to people when they're on stage or they're doing that video and it just goes from they're giving value, 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 and then it gets to the sales part of I can't actually ask you to work with me. What happens?
So there's two things. There's the first idea, which is the sales perception is what we call a zero-sum game. So zero-sum means that the perception is if I'm selling to you, you lose because you give me money, and I lose because I took your money. And a lot of people either perceive that it's a zero-sum game or it's a one-sum game where you lose and I win. And this is the first misconception that a ton of us have is like, that person is going to lose because they part with their money.
Yeah.
Which is, it's really strange when you actually like logic it out what the actual fear is. It's like, they're going to lose because they part with their money. Now, the interesting thing is anyone that has that belief also probably has an over-delivery strategy to compensate for the investment that people make, right? So you're most likely the kind of person that when you sign a client, you just do anything for them. Like you actually beat yourself up more if they don't get a result and you think it's your fault, even though they might not have done the work, but you internalize it. Yeah, right? It's most coaches. And so this is the other thing.
Used to be me, Caleb. I used to beat myself up after every training. And this was when I first started my group training. It was like, I need to do more. I need to do more. And then it's funny now in hindsight because you go, oh my God, you give so much value, and you go. The thing is, when you over deliver too, it almost cheapens what you do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you're doing those 11 p.m. messages or you're doing those extra half hour or 10-minute calls that turn into an hour and you're going, this isn't equating. Like, I can't keep this up. I'm guaranteed. Yeah, people agreeing. I really feel like you hit on a really beautiful point. By the way, people are watching, please ask some questions and we will come to them. Caleb, you have a 5-step method. You created this yourself. Could you please, do you want to talk through that?
Yeah, let me just tie up that last loop, just in case anyone's like, what does that have to do with, overcoming my fear? The first one is understanding that it's not a zero-sum game. Like if you can really understand that it's not a zero-sum game, but also if you have the over-delivery pattern, realize that if someone pays you, you will never, ever let them down. Like just think about that for a moment. If a client pays you, you will never be the coach, consultant, or expert who doesn't deliver. You can't. It's not actually in your makeup. If you are the over-delivery person who worries about like over-delivering because they've paid you, if you accept payments, you will never be the coach that doesn't deliver. It can't happen. Like you won't let it happen. So this is the way you can understand sort of bypassing that zero-sum game is understanding that it can be a win-win. If your solution is genuinely high quality and it delivers a result, it's a win-win. It's not a zero-sum game. Just because they hand over money doesn't make it a zero-sum game. And the second thing to help you combat that is to realize that if you're like most coaches who have an over-delivery pattern, then when they pay you, you're not the person that's going to cop out. You're the person who's going to work harder. And this is something that I love teaching, which is like, you should charge enough that tickles your client a little bit and tickles you at the same time. Because you want to be at that price point where you're like, I better fucking make my money, right? Where you really, really, really work. And for them, it's the same sort of level of like, okay, I'm serious about this. Like I'm genuinely committed. And that doesn't, you don't have to charge $20,000 to make that happen. It has to be contextually appropriate. What I mean by contextually appropriate is, within your niche, within your market, within the problem that you solve, make sure that there's a price point that requires emotional investment from your person. And it doesn't have to be 10, 20 grand. It just probably has to be more than $100, right? Because we'll do more for a higher investment than we would a little one. And again, people are like, do I have to charge 10 grand? No, just charge a price point that tickles you a little bit, that you're like, oh, I don't know if I could. And that will tickle them. Because in that tickle space, they'll do more and you'll do more.
In the tickle space, I love it. In the tickle space.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Now tell me, I told you, people watching, Caleb is the one real person that I love speaking to about sales. You make it sound so fascinating. You make it sound real. I always enjoy listening to you talking about sales. I can see why you're very passionate about it. You have made it a craft. Do you know what I mean? And it is a craft. So you've made 5 steps to ethically make more sales without sounding salesy. Do you want to run through those? Have we tied that knot?
Yep,
loose
we
end
did.
off for that last piece? Nice.
We did. So with these 5 steps, this is for anyone who gets lost in the sales conversation. So like if you've ever gone sort of halfway through and you'd be like, do I ask for the money now? Like that feeling's popped up and you've gone, is now money time? Did I talk too much? Have they talked enough? Like if there's ever that feeling of when do I pitch question come up, right? If you're doing that, this is perfect for you, right? If you've ever gone, do I let them, or do I let them think about it, or do I close them now? Or you're avoiding sales and worried about like yourself, like you're in that space where I don't want to sell, and you're going, I don't like it, it's sleazy, it's gross. And so they work for all 3 of those people.
Yep.
On the other side of this is where sales feels like a conversation. And I did a post about this the other day. When I first learned this idea of sales from a mentor of mine, she said the best sales conversation, the benchmark of a great sales conversation ends on a thank you. So what we're looking for at the end of this is 2 things. Number 1, the prospect says thank you for closing them, right? That's for a lot of people, that's a paradigm shift. They're like, what do you mean people would say thank you when I took their money? It's like, yes, that's possible if you sell well. The second thing is, it feels like a normal conversation, just with a slight structure in it. It's like little check boxes that we tick along the way. And if you tick these check boxes, your chance of converting that person from a curious to a client is much higher. And so those are kind of the 2 major goals that we're looking for. And every consulting deal, that a personal brand, that an expert, that a coach, where you sell a service that is one-to-one, a program, a mastermind, a retreat, it all follows the same framework. And it's 5 key steps. The first step worth writing down is the connection and introduction phase. And I'll go deeper on the steps as much as we can in the time that we have. So the first step is, I draw them in circles. So we have circle number 1, which would be the introduction and connection phase. The second circle that we have is the dream. So the dream in the short form, before we go deeper on it, is what is the prospect's goals? Um, the third step is what we call the pain. So they're like why it's important to them. Well, not quite why it's important, but the pain
Like
of
their,
staying
like
there.
their symptoms, what they're experiencing and feeling.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So like
nice.
symptoms, consequences, their current reality is another way to think about it. We'll go deeper on it in a
Nice.
second.
Okay. Yeah.
The fourth step is the why it's important. And then the last step is the closing of the sale.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about, I mean, I know this is what you do as a living, Caleb, and just for, again, just as I always contextualize when I'm giving away value, to contextualize this, Caleb has given you here a snippet of what he does. Obviously, you have programs and coaching that you offer.
Yeah.
I always like to contextualize this stuff. So it's like, and I do this even with the 10-day Facebook Live challenge, is you've got to contextualize it, because otherwise I don't want people going through 10 days of free Facebook Lives and going, okay, I'm an expert now.
Yeah.
The reality
Yeah.
is it's a teaser of what it is that I actually do. So while we're on this just point, before we move on to that connection and introduction phases, how does someone find you, Caleb? And I'll also put this into the comments below.
Yeah.
How does someone
So
find
I've got a Facebook group, probably the best place to go. It's where we have free trainings and scripts and all that kind of thing. It's called the Ethical Sales Movement. It's pretty clear on my profile. That's the best place to go. Is
okay.
for anyone that's watching this, there is I'm about to say a script, but I don't like scripts. But it will give you a baseline of the ideas of questions that you need to ask in an order that follows what we're showing. But the problem that I have with scripts, and I was always reluctant to build one, but the problem that I have with scripts is that what do you say when the script doesn't work? So I try not to teach scripts, rather a framework that this conversation, you need to check these boxes. And
It's
that's,
like a
the script.
framework. It's like a framework, and inside that framework you can play in there.
Yeah, yeah. It's like here's the harbor that you need to play in, not the individual grains of sand. And that to me is
Okay.
what scripts feel like, is learning
Nice.
an actual framework. Terrible metaphor, but let's go. So step number one, introduction. Your goal is to build know, like, and trust, and set the frame of the conversation. So
Yeah, nice.
what does that mean? So know, like, and trust is, you're probably familiar with this from presenting and that kind of thing. It really doesn't have to go long, about 3 to 5 minutes. The most important part here is what we call setting the frame or the tone of the conversation. Pre-framing the conversation. So what this looks like is giving the person an agenda of what we're going to be doing today. Because in this first part, this is where most sales conversations fall over. There's no consistently set frame by the coach for the prospect. You kind of jump on the phone, you're like, hey, how are you? What's going on? And then you're like, now it's sales time. And like you get into your like sales process or whatever. So
Yep.
the
Especially
frame
when
that
the
I
nerves
think,
kick in.
yeah, especially when the nerves kick in.
Especially people with who are nervous about the sales conversation.
Yeah.
It just overrides, and it's the same with the presenting. Is the mouth starts to take off, and the brain's going, "You're talking too much. You're talking too much. You're talking too much." But the mouth just keeps going,
Yeah.
and the person you're interviewing or qualifying sales call with is not actually speaking.
That's it. And this is one of
That's a
the
phenomenon.
rules to apply. It's one of the rules to apply to sales, which is um, he who asks the questions owns the frame, which is really important to understand that, like, you have two individuals like this that are separated at the end of the sales conversation. And by the end of it, you want to be like this. The more you talk, the more they go away. The more they talk, the more they come towards you. And so the best sales conversation is where the balance of conversation is, and they've said more. This is how you know you're heading in the right direction. Now, one of the other ideas, these two other ideas that make this possible, is if you focus on yourself, you will feel self-conscious. If you focus and turn up the curiosity for your client, you will be less so. And so this is a really key distinction to make. And I think you taught me this in presenting way back when we went to that workshop, is if you focus on serving and caring about them versus what you're trying to do in the sales conversation, you'll have less insecurities. So that's kind of the first thing, that they turn up the curiosity, right? This is an inquisitive conversation about the person in front of you, where your goal is to turn up care and curiosity. What's the other thing? Can't remember. We'll come back.
Hey, look, can I ask you a question too?
Yeah.
What I find with is you teach sales, for example, and if you've got a certain program, and if you do all the talking and just talk about 5 things about your program, if they're not 5 things that are resonating with me because you haven't discovered what I actually need, I go, those 5 things I don't need. No, this isn't right for me. We're going to look for somebody else. But if you listen to what I actually need, you go, okay, those 5 points that I were about to mention are just 5 points that I've written down, right? Because you've got to have some kind of go-to. But in between those 5 points, you've got all this knowledge that you go, can I help with that? Yep, I help with that. I've got this for that. So if we don't establish what the other person needs, we end up selling them something or trying to sell them something that we don't even know that they want.
Yeah,
The
spot on.
title was catchy. But yeah, we never get down to the, this is what you need. Of course, actually in week 2 and 3, blah, 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 we actually do this. This is the name of that week, but these are the subtleties and these are the things that you're actually talking about. Perfect.
This is, you reminded me of what I forgot before. So this is called earn the right to pitch, right? So most people, when they jump on a sales call, they pitch straight away, right? It's like, hey, we do this, and they talk themselves. What I say is just stop, right? Earn the right to pitch. Now, we earn the right to pitch by turning up the care and the curiosity for who's in front of us and following these 5 steps. Step number 1 is to set the tone of the conversation, which is, hey, we're going to be here for about 45 minutes. We're going to have a chat about what's going on for you right now. And we're going to have a chat about what some of your goals are. Then, by the end of the conversation, I'm going to make some suggestions about whether or not I can help and where to from here. Does it sound good? That's it. It's literally that simple. Go back, listen to what I said, write it down. Every sales conversation needs to open up the same way, because what that does is you are now in a position of authority. You have taken the I lead this conversation frame. You've set the agenda, and they will fall in to your frame. Because if you think about most coaches, they don't set a frame. Right? There's no frame, so you kind of get to that weird place where they're asking you questions rather than you're asking them questions, and then the second thing they say was, "How much does it cost?" Right, and you're sitting there going, "Do I tell them that?" And the answer, by the way, is no, not till the end. And the way you handle that is this.
Can I ask a question on that piece?
Yeah.
Sometimes, do you feel that sometimes if you know that the price is a no-brainer, can you reverse that and put the price up front and relax them and just go, look, you can let your buttocks relax right now. This is the price up front. Now let me explain what's involved. Does that make sense? Like sometimes it's, but what's the catch? What's the catch? How much is it? Let's put that
It depends. It depends what the price point is. So I usually suggest anything over $1,000. Don't say the price up front, because what the brain does is it it will measure the investment versus the problem that the person has. So it does a quick comparison. So if you
Yes.
say $1,000 up front, the brain goes according to what problem. Like, I don't know what problem I have yet, so is that actually affordable? And so the brain computes it and it goes, that's expensive. But then expensive compared to what, right? So if the price comes second, then that's expensive, or that's an investment for the problem that I talked about. That makes sense. That equation adds up. And that's why, if you're selling things at a higher ticket, do it towards the end. Anything less than $1,000, you should be okay. But I would suggest if you're selling a 3K plus, that you do it via the phone. Or, if you're teaching it via stage, personally, I back my sales skills one-on-one better than I do from the stage, because they're different skill sets. So selling via stage and selling via webinar is one skill set, selling via the phone is another. So for me, whenever I pitch on a webinar, I pitch to a one-on-one session because it's easier for me to close than to have to learn how to sell via stage or webinar. So,
we've established. Yes.
Yeah, you summarize.
We've established. We've got connection and introduction. We've set up that first phase. Then you move into the second phase, which I've got in the circle as instructed. The dream. So imagine this is established what their dreams are, what their dream is here.
And the thing, you might actually recognize a lot of these stages that you've probably accidentally done at some point during a conversation with somebody, and that's what's caused them to buy. The magic is in knowing that these stages need to be hit in every sales conversation, and they can actually be interchangeable. So you might have a chat with someone, and the second phase that they go into is about their pain. That doesn't mean that the flow's off, right? You can still talk about pain. You just have to make sure that you talk about the dream next, right? So this second phase is adaptable depending on the person that you're with. So you might come to someone and say, cool, so the best question to transition is, what's going on in your business right now? What's going on for you right now? And they'll either start talking about their dreams or their pains, and their goals or the consequences or the realities of right now.
When they speak about that, do you have like an A and a B type client? So A is the person that I'm stuck. I want to move away from these symptoms that look like this. It feels like this. Then there's like if when I'm on a sales call, meaning I'm looking for a mentor or help in a certain area, I'm normally always speaking about the dream. What's next? What's beyond where I'm at? And can you get me there? Whereas I know some people are, I'm stuck, get me the hell out of here.
Yeah.
So do you kind of know instantly then it's like, are there an A or a B? They're away or towards?
To make the sales flow work, you don't need to do that. So like there's kind of levels of advancedness in this. And so I call level 1 close the deal. And level 1 is about and making sure in every conversation you build pain and you build dream. That's level 1 sales. Level 2 sales, which is close the person, is understanding those little intricacies of the different kind of human behavioral code that's in front of you, which is a more advanced idea that you don't necessarily need to close deals. But if you want to be closing at 60, 70, 80% of inbound leads, then you need to have the ability to adapt to the person in front of you. But yeah, you can make some pretty powerful reads on people, but it's only as good as the mastery of the fundamental. It's like it's a fancy dance move, but if you can't put one foot in front of the other, you don't really need that stuff. So stages 2 and 3, which is the pain and the dream, are very much as they sound. So you're having a conversation, you're getting curious about what somebody's goals are working with you. Or what the opportunity cost and consequences are of inaction, right? So dream is goals, pain is opportunity cost and inaction. And these can interchange, right? So don't get caught up in it has to be dream first and it has to be pain. It can be pain then dream. Your only objective is to make sure you tick each one of these circles as you go along, right? We've talked about pain. Awesome. We've talked about dreams. Wonderful. That's the goal for these 2 steps of the flow.
Got you.
Cool.
So, okay. Then, so it feels like we've already done that. Number 3, the pain, symptoms, and current reality. Was that number 3?
That's
okay.
it.
Their why, number 4 in a circle, the why.
So this is where you future pace someone, right? So for those of you that are coaches, this is where you extend their desire with time. So let's say, for example, you want to become a presenter and I want to move a room with 100 people. And the question you would ask here would be like, what's the purpose of that? Why is that important to you? What's the greater meaning? So you want to kind of tap into their vision beyond just the scope of, I want to join this program. What does this allow you to do from a grander perspective?
Yeah, nice.
So an example would be people want to close more sales, and then we get to the why. It's like, for what purpose? And they would say, because I want to provide for my family, right? I want to be able to have consistent cash flow. I want to have financial security. I want to invest in things. And I want to be able to work with more awesome clients. I want to have more impact. So that's understanding their why.
Okay, I love it. I love it. And then, of course, we get down to the greasy, sleazy, hard part that people start to get dry in the throat, the closing.
Yeah. So this is fun. When everyone gets here, it's like they get a change in persona. And this really cool person that's been there for the last 40 minutes is like, this turns into this, like, it's money time. It's like, this is the best part.
Caleb, can I tell you something which you might find quite funny? I've been saying non-stop to the people that I've been working with of late is the last part, when you go to sell or close, the energy has to stay the same. It's a simple invitation. It's like, are we ready to work with each other? Are we ready to do this? And then it's like a simple yes or no. And I remember I was doing a workshop and I'd been practicing this, like how do I move from giving away so much value, and I put my heart and soul into my work on stage, and 26 years in the making, and then getting to that part in the sale where how does it just move through effortlessly and people don't feel the shift in the energy. And I did it I don't want to tell people what the workshop was, but I did it, and I was so overwhelmed with how well I did it. I started getting tears in my eyes, and I'm looking at Danny in the back corner, and I'm like getting overwhelmed because she's so proud of me. And I'm going, dude, you're crying during the sales process. But like, oh my God, that was perfect. It was just genuine. I've given you all this value. I know some of you want to work with me now. Let's get on with it. Who's ready? And it was like, oh my God. It's been a while, but the energy never changed. There was no little blip. It was the same. I love that you brought that up. I love, because that's what happens. The energy changes, doesn't it?
Yeah, you get all tense. So it's almost worth probably changing the name of that last step to the invitation, because that's kind of what it is, in the sense that and this is the mistake that most people make, is like, then they go into pitch mode, right? And this is when you kind of consciously make that decision to, now I need to close, that's when all the fear and anxiety comes up. But what I want you to do is, I want you to remember the rules that we talked about at the start. Turn up the care, turn up the curiosity, and don't do the talking. So the best way to start a close is to get your prospect to start selling themselves to you. And the way that we do that is with a magical phrase, which is, how can I help? So when most people close, it's you telling them what they need. And remember, we're earning the right to pitch. We're still not pitching at this stage. We've gone 5 steps and we're still not pitching. And the best thing to do here is to kind of summarize the conversation and look at, so these are the problems that you had, these are the opportunity costs, these are the consequences if it stayed the same. Here's some of the goals, here's why it's important to you. How can I help? What do you need from me in order to help you do this? What kind of skills and attributes? And so in this part, they now tell you what they need to close the deal.
I love it.
Which is amazing because you don't have to pitch anything. It then moves from a pitch to a selection where you can then honestly check in and write it down. Okay, these are the 6 things that they want. Can I do that? Yeah, I can. I can do that. Right? So you go, yeah, I can do that. Is there anything else that we need to cover? And they're like, nah, not really. You go, cool. Can I tell you about my cool thing? They're like, yeah, I've been waiting for you to tell me about your cool thing the whole time. Thank you. And you go, wonderful. Here's how it works. And it's this just slight shift in paradigm shift at the end of the call to keep it about them and just get them to buy in. And you don't have to stress or worry. Just make sure that the problems that they have are the problems that your program solves, and you'll never have to worry about being sleazy because somebody is placing an order with you. They're going, I want a Big Mac, a cheeseburger, and 2 large fries and a Coke. And you're like, we're all out of Coke today, but I can do Big Macs and cheeseburgers. How's that sound? They're like, yeah, cool, awesome, $34.50, let's go. Right? Like, that's what it needs to feel like, as opposed to this really awkward, strange, it's this and it's this and this, and you're not even sure if they want it or like if it's necessary. It's just confusing. So strip out all of that.
Yeah.
Turn up the care and the right to pitch. How can I help?
Do you know how can I help or can I help became my biggest question through the beginning of the pandemic and the lockdown. And I know that from the people that I was teaching, plus people that I was speaking with, said it doesn't feel right to be pitching or asking for money right now. And I was like, for a week, I bought into that and going, okay, you can't do this, it's not ethical. And then going, hold on, how are we all going to pay the rent if no one's making sales? How are we going to pay the rent? And then I went, we're in a pandemic. If there's any time in the lifespan of my 46 years that anyone needs help right now, it's now.
Yeah.
It's freaking now. And I got my head around it and went, oh my God. It's like, this is where I created my new stand out and video like an expert in 6 weeks. It was like, people need video now more than ever. People need spiritual guides now more than ever. People need naturopaths now more than ever. The stress, coming out in rashes, and people need sales coaches. It's like more than ever, the coronavirus hasn't made business go away. We solve problems for business. That's what we do. We solve a problem. That problem hasn't gone away. People were just now sidetracked. And so if you come back to the Caleb, can I help? When you start that conversation, it just gets to, bro, can I help? Yes or no? Okay, cool. It became so unicky, and I was actually doing a service by asking the question which everybody was worried about asking. It's like
that. Yeah, spot on. Remember the how part though, because can I help creates a yes/no response, and so any kind of like how can I help or what can I help, how and what are your 2 best friends. Why questions will get your person defensive. So try to stay away from why. But things like how can I help? What do you need in order to achieve this? Wonderful questions to ask during the close. What did we miss? is another great one, because what that does is it presupposes if they say we didn't miss anything, then they have just qualified themselves. There's nothing that I missed. So a question like, what did we miss, is really, really powerful. They go, nothing. Or they tell you what they did miss. So it's a really good way of screening out objections.
I'm just laughing. I have a call after this with someone who I'm sure is watching this. I'm going to run through these. Just
Yeah.
laughing. Anyway, I'll do it because it'll be fun. Tell me, is this what you're talking about now, that discover the process of reverse qualification, meaning that it eliminates your objections? Is this what we're going through right now?
Yeah. So there's two more reverse qualifications that we can add in. The reverse qualification is the idea that instead of the coach qualifying themselves to the prospect, you get the prospect to qualify themselves to you in a really cool way, where you say, well, how can I help? Or what do you need in order to do that? Or what do we need to do in order to accomplish this? That's the first stage. You can add two more, which eliminate the time and competitor objections. This is where we break the why rule for just these two questions, because we want them to answer this in sort of an emotionally invested way. So during the close, we would say, so how can I help? And they'll go through, what did we miss? Nothing. And then go, I got two more questions. The first one, I'm curious, why now? So why now gets the prospect to think about, why is now the time to take action? Really simple.
It's really nice in that during the middle of the lockdown, like we're talking like March. My God, that seems like so far away, doesn't it? It's crazy. March. My first question was, while we're in the middle of a pandemic, while everyone is rolling over, buckling down, cutting costs, why are you here on a call with me looking to invest in this program? Like, why are you doing that? Why are you doing the opposite? And then they would tell me exactly why they were willing to move forward. They had already qualified themselves, going, this is what I need. And so in the first 10 seconds, it was all laid out on the table. It's like, okay, cool. We've just established that you're here to invest, and these are the reasons why. So from right up that front, it was like, okay, cool. Now, do I supply those tools, or do I have those tools to actually help? So it established a yes, no for me right at the beginning too.
Yeah. I like putting them towards the end of the conversation, because sometimes, and it depends on how charismatic you are. Like, really charismatic people can get away with it at the start, be like, why now? And the other one's, why me? If you're less charismatic and you're nervous on the call, save it for the end, after the how can I help? Because what happens is your prospect's already emotionally invested in you if they've made it through the 5 steps. So when you ask a why question, they're less likely. But really charismatic people can just ask it and get away with it. So the second one that we have is why me? So I have two of them. So why now? And remember that the entire phrase is I'm curious, why now? And remember, it's not an acquisition. An acquisition? What's the word? Accusation, right? So listen to my tone when I say acquisition. Well, it is an acquisition in a sense, because I'm acquiring his customer. But why? So why now? It's not said like, why now? Right? Which sounds defensive, which will elicit a defensive response. Even when I say, how can I help? It's not, how can I help? Right? It's not the commanding tonality. It's the fair play tonality, which is, hey, how can I help? Like, I'm a friend. That's kind of what you're trying to say with your tone, which is, why now and why me? So make sure you ask these kind of like separate bullets in the chamber. The first one is, so why now? Let them answer, let them talk. The more they talk in response to the qualification of this question, the more they sell themselves on why right now is the time to take action, which means you'll eliminate the I need to think about it objection. Then
Nice.
the second one, once they've answered, say, make sure you acknowledge it. Right? So you go, cool, I appreciate it. Sounds like it's important to you. Just one last question. Why me? And I know these questions seem like totally simple, and you're like, surely there needs to be more. It doesn't. Just like allow the magic of these questions to do their work, and they will reward you tenfold, like you wouldn't believe.
Mm. Yeah, I love it. I love it. And there's such, for those of you watching, these are such simple questions. And I loved how you also phrase that, you know, if you're not charismatic, and I think when we talk about not charismatic, it's actually if this still makes you nervous.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? If this still makes you nervous, then using those questions, why me, why now, in the right place or more at the end are fantastic. And then, of course, it's like anything. The more that you do this, the more that your confidence, as you start to get that bone-dead confidence, you become charismatic in this space as well. Caleb, your last point here was understanding the exact conscious psychology triggers that stimulate the buyer's response in your client's brain. The words that stand out there are unconscious psychological triggers that stimulate the buying response.
So we're about to go a little bit advanced. So there's this
Hold
idea.
on.
Yeah, holding on. Oh, good. So what I'm teaching here, these 5 stages of flow, the difference between pain and dream is a psychological principle that we call cognitive dissonance.
Mm-hmm.
And this cognitive dissonance, when somebody has it, is what drives them to solve the problem. So a really bad example is like if somebody is thirsty, right? The thirsty is the pain, and hydration is the goal. Now, when somebody experiences thirsty and they know they can experience hydration, it drives the behavioral response to get a glass of water. So in this metaphor, your product is the glass of water, but you need to understand their pain and their dream to drive the buying response into your program.
Right.
And like we don't really have a ton of time to go into like the massive depth of how that's made up, but if you just understand the basic idea of people buy based on cognitive dissonance, which is the difference between their pain reality and their future goal reality, their future dream, that's what triggers a buying response. And as long as you know that, you'll be better than most of the salespeople in the market.
Mm. I like that. I use that expression, cognitive dissonance, quite a bit in presenting as well.
Nice.
Yeah, nice. Caleb, if we were to just do a quick refresher on that, number one is you had the connection and introduction of a sales call. In the framework of sales call, one, you had the connection and introduction. That was setting the tone for the next 15, 20, 25 minutes, for example. And then we established number two was their dream.
Mm-hmm.
Number three was the pain, the symptoms, their current reality that we're working with.
Mm-hmm.
Number four was their why. Why? What does this allow you to do? So working with me is going to allow you to do what? If you get better at presenting, it's going to allow you to do what? Well, you're going to get better at sales. What's that going to allow? You're going to make more money? Great. But what's that for? What's that going to allow you to do?
Another way to think about that is what other areas of your life will it affect?
Yeah, nice.
Like what's the flow-on effect?
Nice. And for those people, I know there's a couple on here who are watching right now who are into naturopathy, health, etc. This is a real easy one. You know, being healthier, having more energy. What's that going to give you? More time, energy with your family. More time being able to work and deal with people in a capacity where Your energy is higher. You're more alert. Obviously, more family time because you're happier. You're better to be around, no doubt. So these are the things too. When you're in that health profession, whatever profession you are, is like, what are they going to get? What other areas of their life are going to be stimulated or benefit from this? And then number 5 was the closing. The how can I help? Why now? Why me? What did I miss in that last part, that closing?
That was it.
How and what?
Yeah. And then you prescribe your solution. So once they've answered those questions, maybe the last one is just permission. So is it cool if I share with you some options? So
Yes.
that phrase, is it cool? Is it okay if I share some options with you? Is it cool? Is
Right.
it okay if I share some options with you? And then you can go into, so here's how we work together. We do ABC, and how you get started is you can either pay in full or you can put down, or we can set up a payment plan. Which do you prefer? And
Yeah,
that's,
I like that.
yeah, it's called a double bind, where they think they have a choice, but there's only 2 choices, either pay in full or start a payment plan. All of this starts getting, that's the basic framework that you need.
Nice. Nice. But it's always, I always love speaking to you. You make sales. It is simple. It is simple. It's just that we overcomplicate it. I was laughing before of likening it somewhat something else, and you going to a toy store and buying a toy for your kid, and the toy's sitting there, and you ask the shop assistant how much it is, and he won't tell you because he feels icky selling it to you. You're going, but I want that freaking toy. Just tell me how much it is. And quite often it's that simple, where the person on the phone where you're having that conversation is, what happened to me, my turning point was people were telling me to shut up and just tell them how much it was and they want to buy. And they went, I'm trying to sell this too much. It was literally, Andrew, you had me at hello, shut up and just take my credit card details. It's like, I keep talking too much. I get it.
Yeah.
And that was a nice learning point. And what do you think about, do you have any pre-sales conversation stuff that you do? Like, I have a form to make sure that I understand where they're at in their business, what their dreams are, what their challenge. I establish that before I get on a call and spend time.
Yeah.
Do you recommend that, or is that more down the?
Yeah, I think it's great. I think because that just helps your frame setting. Because then you can say, when you open up the frame, you're like, look, we're just going to go a little bit deeper on some of the things you mentioned on the form, some of the realities you've got going on right now, and then some of the dreams and outcomes that you have. And then obviously at the end, if it makes sense, I'll present you with a couple of options if I feel like you're fit for us to work together. And so, that's fine. Like, it gives you a lot of fuel and a lot of extra rapport at the start, because you're not asking them anything that they're uncomfortable talking about.
Yeah. There's just a series of questions that allows me. I feel like it speeds the sales process up too. So I'm not going through this list of questions. I mean, everything there is written that I need to know. I'm like, I know where they are. I know what they want. I know what's holding them back. I know how many leads they're getting, how many opportunities they're getting. I can kind of see where they need to improve. And now it's just creating that connection and going through stuff. That's good to know, bro. Really big thank you. Thank you from me and from the people watching in the Heart of Presenting. They are right now in day 9 of the 10-day Facebook Live challenge, which is going crazy. It's been a very, very busy 10 days. The last challenge we did was at the beginning of lockdown, so that was a really bizarre 10 days of everybody's up and down emotions. And this time, I just seem to be hitting them in the middle of the world being flipped upside down this year. Bro, thank you very much from us. Just one more time, what is the name of your Facebook group where people can find you?
The Ethical Sales Movement.
the ethical sales movement. Are you okay with dropping that into the comments?
Yeah, I can put it in there for you. I
Beautiful.
did mention there was a script as well. Are you cool if I just drop that in there for them?
Yep.
Yeah, it'll give them an idea of, if you miss some of the language. But just, remember, script will give you an idea of the questions to ask. You want to make sure you understand this flow, which you have now, right? And this is nothing special per se. It's the dedication to doing this and the discipline to making this the priority in every conversation that is what makes you good at sales. It's not special. Anyone can do this. Like, it's not asking someone about the pain that they experience and the dreams that they have. It's not a magical skill set. It's very accessible to you and anyone, whether you're an introvert, you're an extrovert, whether you've got the gift of the gab or you don't. This flow is the structure. And that's all you need. You only need a framework, and you can close more deals.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you very much. All right, my friends. Again, you're in day 9 of the Facebook Live Challenge. Enjoy. We are creating our own language. Our language becomes our leverage today. Caleb, thank you very much for your time, and I hope that in the very near future we can again join that trans-Tasman bubble, and I can actually come back and family can come over here. It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah.
Thank you, man.
All
Thank
right,
you for
brother.
having me. It's been a pleasure.
I'll speak to you soon.
See you soon. Thanks, guys.